Hello, my dear listeners. This is your favorite podcast host, Charlie, from June of 2025. If you're hearing one of these episode toppers, it means this episode is no longer totally current in some way. Now, this may be obvious to you if you've scrolled deep into our episode archive of all these past dates, but just in case it was not, please receive this content warning that what you're about to listen to is not completely current. In an effort to avoid confusion over the general state of the landscape, but still try to maintain some of the transparency of the project that this podcast has been, as well as I think some of that valuable process-based information that's present in all of our episodes, I've decided just to leave all of our older episodes up, even if the landscape has shifted significantly since the recording occurred. So when we become aware of a big change, I'm just adding a topper to the episode like this to make clear what is current as of now in the middle of 2025. Of course, now, as soon as I release these episode toppers into the ether, my information becomes immediately not current, so we appreciate your grace there. And we also can't commit to catching every single small shift in the landscape that may happen when you're talking about over 200 episodes so far, but we're gonna do our best. And we'll certainly be able to catch all the major shifts in hopefully a reasonable amount of time. At least that will be our goal. And I will just say in general, I'm saying this at the top of all of the episodes to make it clear that this is not about a specific person or program, nor the specific episode that you're about to listen to. But just in general, one faculty member does not make an entire program, in our opinion, right? Obviously, there are some program heads and really valued professors that have had those outsized impacts on their programs and have built reputations with their strong hands, but nobody does that alone. And the legacy of that work, that doesn't disappear with a person's leaving, right? So while someone leaving a program that might really shift your opinion on the school, and it's fair to allow it to, it shouldn't completely invalidate that school in your mind, certainly not automatically, right? Both factors, the specific faculty and the institution itself around them, should weigh heavily in your mind. And each situation, it's going to be unique about how much influence you think a shift might have, right? There are no easy answers, but each situation should be weighed individually based on those variety of factors. So it was my goal with this podcast to give you that intimate look into a given program so that you could pick up the vibes of specific professors, hopefully better than you're able to read data off a website. But hopefully to some extent, you're able to extrapolate that vibe as best as you can to the program at large, right? Of course, not every professor is going to be fully representative of every other professor at the program. How could they be? But at least gives you a nice data point and a window in, a vibe data point. And I hope you feel that it's relevant to the program at large beyond just that specific person. Okay, but let's get to your specific episode. Okay, so for this specific episode with RJ Magee, RJ has moved on to MSU Texas, that's Midwestern State University in Texas, which you could have heard about in the episode we did with Dr. Grace Edgar, but RJ is no longer at Longwood University. I'm just going to say in all candor, and I think this likely comes through in the episode, hopefully, that we have never had an MTCA student go to Longwood, at least to my knowledge, and this is not a program that I knew anything about before RJ approached me, reached out to say, could he come on the podcast? So I thought at the time, and I still think, hey, this episode has a lot of utility for those who are doing a deep dive and really trying to understand the full landscape, not only just for this specific school, but just the full landscape in terms of all the kinds of different schools like a Longwood, which maybe people haven't heard of as much, and that exists out there. But when I say something like, I don't know exactly what RJ leaving would do for the state of Longwood, I think that understates the situation in that I really don't know much about Longwood this beyond the episode and the stuff that you hear in the episode. So with that said, same as with all of our other episodes, I think the information about the school is still really helpful for those who are looking at the whole landscape, but I really don't know what the current state is and how many things may be different now that RJ has moved on. But I still hope you really enjoy the interview. Hello, and welcome to Mapping the College Audition, a podcast where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA, that's Musical Theater College Auditions, and today we've got RJ Magee from Longwood University on the show. Longwood may be a school less on the radar for many of you, and of course, may not be a fit for all of our students. We talk about this a bit in the takeaway at the end about sort of the size of schools and figuring out what size is right for you, but it is rare to hear the phrase that we almost have more resources than students to share them with, which is what RJ says today in the interview. But I think a really cool example of this big map of different kinds of programs in the same way that Norwalk might not be right for every student who wants a university experience, Longwood's BFA liberal arts style program may not be for all. but listen on and see if it might be for you. In MTCA news, oh my, do we have a lot. We just had our last mock of the year, wrapping a really beautiful mock season. This was concurrent with our private Baldwin Wallace auditions that were occurring this weekend, and which our students absolutely crushed. I was really proud of everyone at both events. Coming up, a few things to have on your radar as well. We have some in-house masterclasses in Shakespeare and pop next week, which are available to any to take. This is really geared towards seniors about to launch into their audition year. You don't have to be an MTCA student, but you do have to sign up soon as there are only a few spots left in each of these. That pop class is taught by two of our amazing coaches, Will Reynolds, also a friend of the pod, and Alex Fink. And the Shakespeare class is taught by friend of the pod, Ryan Quinn, and yours truly. You want to work with me on some Shakespeare? You get your butt into class. It should be really fun. Those are next Tuesday and Wednesday, the 16th and 17th of January. Shakespeare's on the 16th. Pop Rock is on the 17th. And then we do have a few things expiring today if you're listening on episode drop date. I totally forgot to warn you all last week in the John Cariani episode. We were doing our belt box promo, and I forgot to warn you about our junior workshop that was coming up this week. So for any underclassmen listening, I'm sorry if you hear this too late. By the time you listen, if it's on a Wednesday, it is tonight, Wednesday, January 10th. I'm sorry for the late notice. All of that information is available online at mtca.com. If you click on the banner at the top, it's a free workshop and a chance to meet us and dive into the expectations of the college level. If you can make it, please plan on attending. This is targeted to juniors, but absolutely appropriate for any underclass student. And we will be doing these again in a couple months. We try to do them every couple months, so if you miss it, I really am sorry that I didn't give you more warning. With the New Year's and the holiday, it all snuck up on us. Okay, that's it. We're going to talk a little bit more about upcoming unifieds and such things next week, though I'm excited to see so many of our families in New York, Chicago, and LA. Don't forget about that Belt Box promo. If you missed it from last week, Belt Box is giving 10% off to MTCA students with the discount code MTCA 2024. That's MTCA and the numbers 2024 on Amazon. So please consider that if you're a senior who's uncomfortable warming up in hotel rooms and not sure how to plan out your unifieds warm-up experience. Is that enough intro? It sure feels like it. Let's get into the interview. Well, we are so excited to have RJ Magee from Longwood University on the pod today. RJ has a BA in MT from Temple University. He's a performer, casting director, talent manager, professor, owns a casting office, RJ Magee Casting, an associate talent manager for Baker Management, and a visiting professor of acting at Longwood, which is located in Farmville, Virginia, and they offer a BFA in theater performance with a musical theater minor. RJ, welcome on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
I'm so thrilled to do so. So, okay, I gave you that quick little bio, but talk to me about, this specific multi-hyphen. It is not one we've had as a professor on the show. We've had talent managers and casting directors on the show more as artist guests, but talk to me a little bit about your journey from performer to casting director to talent manager to professor.
Well, it's always been really important for me to maintain my professional career while also being in higher education. And my career in the industry essentially started as a performer. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, grew up performing at the Muni and stages and Repertory Theater of St. Louis. And then I went to Interlochen Arts Academy for my junior and senior year of high school as a theater major, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with. And then I was in the very first musical theater cohort at Temple University. There was only 16 of us, freshmen, sophomore, transfer students, and that has since grown into a very vibrant undergraduate musical theater program. And then when I graduated, I knew I wanted to really give a go at being a professional actor, but being at Temple, which was a BA at the time, very liberal arts based, I was introduced to a lot of different other aspects of the industry. And that's really when I fell in love with this idea of producing and casting and sort of the human resources part of our business. I was an intern at the Arden going into my senior year of college and got to work on principal casting for their production of August Osage County and Charlotte's Web. But I also realized from those experiences, you know what, I'm not totally ready to divest myself of this performance career. So, I did what most people do when they graduate. I did UPTA. I went to New York. I actually lived in Philadelphia for quite a few years after graduation and commuted. I did shows all over the country: Florida, Colorado, Michigan, Arizona. And then I met my now boss, Jamie Baker. I met him as an actor, actually. I interviewed with him for representation. He owns Jamie Baker Management. He's had his company for over 20 years in New York City. Got his start as a manager, specializing in commercials, non union commercials, and voiceovers and TV and film and print. And he really wanted to expand a theater roster. So I said to him, I want to do this for you, but we're going to start small. We're just going to start with people that I performed with,
Mm-hmm.
friends of mine, colleagues of mine. And within the first month, someone had booked Bandstand when it was a paper mill. Um, and it just sort of kept going from there. And we've had people
Mm-hmm.
on tour, and I had someone in Beautiful on Broadway for the year and a half up until it closed. Um, I just had someone close out the Sound of Music International tour. I have someone that's there who's going to be in a show that's running at New World Stages next year in
Mm-hmm.
2024. Book of Mormon tour, Kinky Boots, some TV shows. So it's really been amazing, and it's 100% freelance. So it's something I've been doing concurrently while having a professional acting career, while being in grad school for 3 years, getting my MFA, and now while I teach full time at Longwood University.
Just amazing. So yeah, let's talk a little bit, if we come up to now, of like, what is that current balance of, your professing work, professorial work,
Mhm.
your teaching work, and also now are you actively managing clients? And I guess how does that interact with like your students who then potentially could become your clients?
Well, I would love for some of them to become my clients. Our program here at Longwood is very small in terms of student population. It's not small in terms of resources, but it's small in terms of personnel, students.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really only a good thing because it allows for so much hands on work that we're able to do with them in the classroom. I mean, my Acting 2 class next semester is only going to have 6 students in it. Our dance classes usually only have about 6 or 8 students in them, sometimes even fewer. My musical theater performance class is only going to have 11.
Mm-hmm.
My movement class this semester only has 8. So this is a great school for people who want a lot of individual and individualized training
Mm-hmm.
and education. And so I have not graduated a class yet. This is my first semester at Longwood. I finished my MFA at Minnesota State University, Mankato in the spring, which also has a BFA musical theater and acting program that I would recommend to your listeners, along with Temple and along with Interlochen. I'm very proud of
Mm-hmm.
all of my former institutions that I'm an alum of. But I think what's so special about Longwood is that we're really able to devote such individual attention to all of our students, and then I'm able to bring the professional world into the work that we're doing in the classroom pretty much on a regular basis, and many times at no cost to my department or to my students. So I teach a master class called agents, managers, and casting directors. Oh my. And so I give them a full demonstration of the resources that I use as both a talent manager and as a casting director to submit
Mm-hmm.
actors for theater and musical theater and film and television. And that's through a software that is actually not available to the public.
Mm-hmm.
It's the sister platform of Actors Access, which is a
Mm-hmm.
website that all actors have access to and can create a profile and submit themselves for jobs on. And I would recommend that to all of your listeners. But then there's another piece of it that's only accessible to agents and managers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you see the breakdowns for Wicked and Hamilton and all the TV shows and the Marvel movies and Netflix and HBO and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. And that's what we use to get people appointments.
Mm-hmm.
And as of the last year or two, that's also become what's called EcoCasts, where the casting director sends an invitation to my office through Breakdowns Express, asking the actor to make a video and upload it
Mm-hmm.
to Actors Access, and that goes straight to casting. So I'm sure Many of your guests have mentioned that that is pretty much the industry standard right now for the first round of most auditions. Not all, but many of them. And I can speak a little bit more about that if you'd like. But it's just something that I constantly do concurrently. I still perform. I did Anything Goes over the summer, directed by Katie Huffman. She was the original Ula, and the producers
Mm-hmm.
won the Tony Award. And our cast was mostly made up of CCM alums and current students. So that was really interesting hearing about their training, since I teach in more of a liberal arts based program,
Mm-hmm.
and hearing more of what it's like to be in a conservatory and to, for myself as an actor, to sort of work alongside people
Yeah.
with that level of intensive training.
Well, let's get into some of that. Let's get into some of the Longwood specific training. I mean, I love that. And one thing that we neglected to mention, just because I didn't have it written down, was the cohort size. So, what when you mention you've an acting class of 6, what does it typically? And I know it can vary, but what is typically an incoming BFA theater performance class look like at Longwood? I mean, we're talking 6, 8, 10.
Well, it's very, 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 very small, and we don't work because we're a smaller university. For one, Longwood University is
Sure.
only about under 5,000 undergrads.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we don't work off of, like, okay, we're looking to accept our 8 to 12 BFAs for the fall. It's
Sure.
really on an individual basis.
Mm-hmm.
So that could literally mean there's only a few BFAs in any given incoming class,
Uh huh.
sometimes, if any.
Uh huh.
And there's also opportunities to be considered for our BFA later in their academic career. So they could come to Longwood and then decide that they want to pursue the BFA and then audition for that. So anyone that's listening that's interested in our BFA, all you need to do to be considered is, A, you want to get your application in by December 1st, because that's a priority deadline for merit scholarships. And we have automatic merit scholarships 3.0 and above. And then you would email me and say, I want to be considered for your BFA performance program. And then we would work with you to set up either a virtual or in person audition. Our musical theater minor is not audition based and actually can be applied to any major in the university.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have people here who are thinking, God, I don't, I want to do musical theater, but my parents aren't going to let me major in musical theater. I need to major in business or something, or accounting. You can do that at Longwood and minor in musical theater.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're one of the only programs, at least that I'm familiar with, that offers something like that.
A musical theater minor.
Um,
Yeah, and when you talk about an acting 2 class or the casting director class, oh my, this is now being taken by BFAs and BAs,
right.
non-majors altogether, right? So the whole university. That's some of
Mhm.
what you mean about the liberal arts difference versus the conservatory of a CCM or a Longwood.
Yeah, a lot of our intro classes are open to anyone across the university, and then typically as they move up, it's only majors,
Yeah.
whether they're
Yep.
BFA or they're in our BA program. We also have a robust theater education program. It's actually pretty much our largest program within the theater department. And so many of those students are also in a lot of our performance classes,
Yep.
because I know, Charlie, you're an educator yourself. It's
Heck yeah.
important to be able to do what it is that we teach. So,
So
and
true.
our shows are open to the entire university in terms of casting.
Yep. And so just talk me through a little bit for specifically the BFA theater performance with the musical theater minor. What does that curriculum look like in the 4 years? So you mentioned, the acting 2 class you teach, the casting director class you teach. What am I getting, in terms of acting, singing, dancing as I go through that theater performance BFA?
Well, you take our core theater classes, and then we have movement, voice and speech, business of acting. We have a great classical acting styles curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
We have a great directing concentration, not a formal major or minor concentration, but there's directing courses within our
Mm-hmm.
program. There are musical theater performance, which I'm actually piloting next semester. I'll be teaching the first ever musical theater performance that we've really offered.
Mm-hmm.
And then our musical theater minor is actually really music heavy, which I'm actually quite a bit of a proponent of. And we have a very prestigious music school, and so you're getting a lot of those music classes that will make you really competitive in terms of your musicianship.
And when you
And
say
then our
music heavy, you
dance
mean music
classes,
theory heavy, voice lesson
yeah,
heavy? What's
well,
heavy about the
all
music?
of the above. So
Mm-hmm.
oral skills, sight reading, theory, You walk away with like a strong music base
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, musicianship skills, essentially, is what I'm saying. And then our dance classes, I really like how we do them. We break them up into modules throughout the semester. And so in any given semester, you could take one or all three. So let's say you just wanted to do modern one semester for one credit. It would be like, the months of November and December is when you would
Mm-hmm.
come and do the modern class, and we have
Mm-hmm.
like social dance, and that's over by like the end of September, so it's all taught sort of in a kind of a windowed basis,
Uh-huh.
and you can take one of those or all of those.
And
You
social
know,
dance is like prepping them for the prom or something like that.
social dance in the state of Virginia is a lot of different things, but ballroom certainly falls in there. Also, line dancing is what they learn. They learn line,
Line dancing. I was like, is he talking about swing dancing? I don't know.
and apparently it's pretty common in the South that that's included. So that's what they do for
Cool.
about a
Love
month.
it. Let's talk about what about the broader university. You mentioned being a small university, student number wise. What else do I get outside of the theater department? If let's say I was that person who was going to minor in musical theater, or even if I'm getting the BFA, what other kinds of classes, majors would I be taking at Longwood?
Well, we're definitely, a liberal arts university. We have a very vibrant gen ed curriculum, and we also have just a very vibrant university life. So, Greek life is available to all of our students, tons of organizations, and many of the organizations can also supplement their training, their formal
Hmm.
classes and training that they're doing. So there's a million a cappella groups, a student dance organization. Um, so we have Alpha Psi Omega, which is the theater fraternity, honors fraternity. So this is definitely a great school, like to also get the traditional college experience.
I've asked this of now all of our schools. When we talk about, do you have a sense of the breakdown of where students come from? So I guess how many students really are in the Virginia area versus come from farther away? And then also, if you have a sense, and I know you talk about varying classes, so I may not know exact numbers, but how many end up in New York, end up doing theater in DC, end up going other places? In terms of where do they come from and where do they end up? Do you have a sense of that from the Longwood students?
Well, we do have mostly from the state of Virginia. We're trying to expand more of a national recruitment outreach because we potentially do have some scholarship funds for outstanding performers that are
Hmm.
interested in our program. Um, I would say university wide, a lot of people come from the state of Virginia, but like any state university, that's not a requirement.
Hmm.
And in terms of what people do after graduation, it's been all over the board. We've had people end up in New York. We've had people go on and get their MFA,
Hmm.
which I'm a big proponent of people considering at some point in their educational and career process. We've had people transition to other elements of the business. We had a casting director at the Telsey office for a number of years that's an alum of our program. So you never know what they're going to do. But I have not graduated a cohort yet.
Sure.
And in fact, our senior class is very small, but I've been prepping some of them for professional auditions, some that they've already had like this semester, because we're not far from Richmond, we're not far from DC.
Yep.
We're really not even that far from New York, Philadelphia.
Totally.
The East Coast is sort of at our fingertips, not far
Yep.
from the beach, only a few hours from Virginia Beach.
There's some great
Um,
auditions there at the beach. That's where you can really book the big
yeah,
Broadway show. Yeah. No, but let's talk about that. That's exactly my next question is sort of preparing students for the launch into the business. But you mentioned some of the classes, which is excellent. But then also, what other things in terms of helping them with those connections to the industry, how to talk to casting directors and agents and managers like yourself. But then also just sort of, some schools have showcases, some people have digital
yep.
showcase. What are we preparing the students with to sort of enter to the industry with?
Well, everything's done on an individual basis, again, because we don't have um, cohorts, large cohorts, in the same way that maybe some of our other colleagues in Virginia, Shenandoah, or
Hmm.
VCU or JMU have. So everything's done on an individual basis with the student. So let's say I have a student that wants to be a professional actor and move to New York City, then I'm starting with them probably day one of their senior year, if not sooner, to scope out that plan and begin
Mhm.
making those industry contacts and connections. And I'm only doing it with them.
Mhm.
So this is a school that I tell people, come to Longwood if you want to be selfish,
Mhm.
because you're not going to be competing for a lot of opportunities or time with professors in the same way that you would maybe at some of the schools that I went to.
Mhm.
At this school, I'm practically looking for more students who I can take under my wing and start getting a professional career established for them.
Mhm.
We have almost more resources than we do students to share them with. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
It does. It's
So
very exciting.
we have tentatively Carrie Butler coming in the spring.
Hey, our podcast guest.
Oh my goodness! But we have her coming to do master classes and do a
Mhm.
concert. I had my colleague Daniel Schweitzer. He's in the Frozen National Tour. He zoomed in
Mhm.
earlier this semester. I have Connor Dean. He's runs Black Rock Theater in Connecticut. He's a CCM
Mhm.
alum. He's going to be talking to my kids in a couple weeks. Um, and then next semester during my musical theater performance class, we'll have either an in-person or Zoom guest pretty much like every other week.
Hmm.
So one week you prep your golden age audition, and then the next week you do it for someone from the profession, either virtually or in person. So I mean, I'm constantly bringing in the professional world, and I'm applying it to the students based on what it is that they want to do.
You mentioned cost already a little bit, or specifically mentioned some scholarships. This is what our crack research team came up with: was either 14,000 per semester, which are 28,000, or 40,000.
I don't have those numbers in front of me. That sounds right.
Mm-hmm.
But I encourage people to December 1st deadline, and I know you have a lot of students that have high GPAs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, that's automatic merit scholarship. You can literally look up.
So talk to me about that. You said above a 3.0, do you automatically get? Do you know what they get if they're above a 3.0?
I don't have it in front of me, but it's like, 3.0 to 3.2, they get a couple thousand.
Mm-hmm.
3.2 to 3.4, they get a couple thousand.
Mm-hmm.
3.4 to 3. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's something that you will just know that you're going to get as long as you get it in by that date.
Yep.
And then we have department specific scholarships, some that we give out to incoming students, some that are given out once they're a student here already. And then we can also, depending on the interest level of a candidate, potentially um, come up with some other funds.
Some
So
other
I'll
funds,
leave
some
that a
magic
little.
funds from a pot
I'll
that
leave that
you
a little
keep
more vague, but that
underneath the desk full of
yeah,
cash or whatever.
that would be
Uh-huh.
for the person that is pretty serious about coming here.
Uh-huh. I love it. Okay, my last question on this in this section is just, as a school that is not on the same radar as some of those big name schools, you mentioned CCM, or some of the schools that have been around and have those reputations. I guess, where do you see this as an advantage, and where do you see it as a disadvantage? So if you were talking to a student who was deciding between Longwood and big name school X, how do you advise them in thinking about those differences if they have acceptances at both places?
Well, it depends on where else, and I look at this more as someone from the industry that's, been going to senior showcases and auditioning recent grads for almost 10 years. It would probably depend on what the other schools are that they're
Mm-hmm.
considering or that they've been admitted to. Um, as you know, there are many more BFAs than there were when we were coming
Mm-hmm.
up.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 5 times as many. I mean, and I'm not
Oh, no, more than 5 times. I
exaggerating.
mean, yeah. In
Um,
terms of ones that were on people's radar, it's 10 to 15 times more schools
right.
than you would have. I mean, there are now hundreds of
So there's
BFAs.
lots of programs that you could potentially go to that a casting director or an agent is not going to be overly familiar with.
Mhm.
And I think the days of the name schools, I could probably name three that still seem to really catch people's attention. To me, everything else is a little bit sort of lumped in the same category in terms of like, oh, you went there. Um,
Mhm.
so that's why I sort of recommend something more boutique to people, because what's the most important is A, the training, and B, the amount of opportunities that you're going to get.
Mhm.
These larger programs with a larger student population, there's going to be more competition for stage time, and many students, as you know, might finish their 4 years in a reputable BFA musical theater program and have graduated with not that many performance opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Here, that definitely wouldn't be the case, especially for men. We're very men light at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So for any outstanding male actors, you're pretty much going to be in almost every production that we do. Um, and I just think it's what's most important. Having been on both sides, I've attended programs that are really well known, programs that aren't as well known. I teach in one that isn't as well known. I think the amount of opportunities is what's important in terms of
Mm-hmm.
performance, classroom, and individual attention from the instructors.
Yeah. It's really interesting, you having also have the agent manager side of things, which is so often what people are thinking about, when you graduate, it's sort of like what level of representation makes sense for me? Some people want to go with one of those big, huge agencies, which may have some kind
Right.
of access, but then am I going to get lost in it? Some want the more sort of mid-tier. I want it to have enough access, but I also, I don't know, I'm ready for those big names. And then some want the really boutique experience. It feels like schools there are more levels in that way that, there is such a thing
Exactly.
as a boutique school, which
You know,
I wouldn't have used that word a couple of years ago.
as a talent manager, I've represented people who were formerly with some of the larger named
Yep.
agencies in New York City, and they never got sent out at all. And then with us, they go out every week. And most people
Yep.
aren't super familiar with our office just based on our name.
Yep.
So I think we have to start moving away from that a little bit industry wide, because I don't really think it's super accurate.
Hmm.
I would say, being on the other side of the table, there's really one or two schools that coming out of their programs. I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but it seems like that's going to get you to the front of the line
Yep.
metaphorically in some way.
And we
And
will name those two schools after the break. Just kidding. But we'll take a quick little break and we're going to talk a little bit more about the admission audition process for Longwood. So we're back in flash. All right, we are back with RJ Magee, and we've talked a lot about the audition admission process. So we're just going to fly through some of these questions, and then we're going to dive a little bit more into some business questions too. So let's just talk first. You mentioned basically you apply, and then you send you an email saying, "I want to audition," basically, right? So are all of the auditions currently individual auditions that are scheduled on campus or Zoom?
through the candidate. So we do not have like how many schools have, their 3 on-campus audition dates in the
Yep.
spring, and then maybe they're in Chicago or they go to New York. Everything's just handled on a case-by-case basis based on the interest level of that student, where they're located in the country, what program they want to be considered for,
Yep.
etc.
But they would schedule an individual audition. Either they come to campus or do you do Zoom
Uh-huh.
auditions as
Oh
well?
yeah.
Yeah,
The
both of
BFA
which.
is audition based. You
Yep.
have to audition to be admitted to the BFA, and then there are regular evaluations throughout your 4 years.
Yep. Well, and then just so you're obviously having a big say in the artistic end of things. On the sort of application end, how does it work with the university in terms of, you mentioned above a 3.0, they're getting a scholarship. Does that mean above 3.0, they're academically admitted? How do they how does the academic side of the application factor in to the BFA students?
Well, you have to be admitted to the university before, and really that's actually what I should have said. You apply, get admitted, and then
Yep.
contact me.
Right.
So it is not. I know that there are some programs where it's like a two-way deal.
Hmm.
Your audition and your application are considered as one. At least for us right now, you have to be admitted by the university, and then you can come talk to me about being in the BFA.
Yep. And it's very common. I mean, it happens both ways, but it's very common
Yeah.
that it works that way, that you have academics first.
And I'm not saying Longwood's not a academically solid school. It really is, but I don't think a lot of people have a lot of trouble getting admitted to the university.
True. True. Many of our students are pretty strong academically.
Yeah.
Do you look at any aspect of the academic application? Do you look at essays or letters of recommendation or any of the stuff they submit other than their artistic work?
It's only looked at by our admissions team. Now, what I will start to get, it has not started yet because we're still slightly early, is I will get spreadsheets from admissions of people that have applied as theater majors or put theater
Hmm.
as the major that they're interested in. And so, like some of the people that we called back at Virginia Theater Association, that said they were going to try to apply by December 1st. I'll see if their names are on that list and then follow up with them again and see if
Uh-huh.
they want to do a BFA audition, or if they're just going to go with our BA for now, or what they want to come. We're doing Thespian for a day in February, where you come and watch classes, eat in the dining hall, and then watch my production of Little Shop of Horrors. Do they want to come to that? There's just a million different ways to
Mm-hmm.
really interact with us.
And you mentioned, some of these other opportunities you may do, where you might have seen a video, or you've seen or I guess it would be a Zoom, audition experience. Are they sending any kind of video in with their application? Or are they sending, I mean, if it's not a pre-screened, are they sending basically a video that you have on file? Or if they don't do that, would the only time that you're seeing them be the live or the Zoom experience?
What they would do is, let's say I Jurifieds, I will email them and say, we saw your stuff. I'm from Longwood University. Here's some info about the program. We would love for you to, seriously consider us. Please apply to the university.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know when you've been admitted to the university, and then we will set up a formal audition for our BFA, either via Zoom, or if you want to come to campus and do it for us in person. Or they just say, which does happen actually, I'm just going to enroll at Longwood and do a semester just as a theater major, and then decide if I want to specify
Uh-huh.
and do the BFA.
You do BFA. Yep.
Remember,
I love it.
you could do our BA in theater and do the musical theater minor. You could do theater education and do the musical theater minor. You could be in our music school and do the musical theater
Mm-hmm.
minor.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of let students determine that path for themselves, and sometimes that means that they come and figure things out for a semester or two. But I know
Yep.
we also have many young people who know that they want to be in a BFA program the minute they step on campus in the fall, and for those, we're willing to make that happen for them as well, or consider them for that program.
Yep. Well, and one thing we haven't talked a lot about is just the fact that you are new at this school. Are there big, dreams and visions? You sort of mentioned, hey, I'm piloting this specific class. Like, are there things 4 or 5 years from now that you would see, hey, here would be my vision for what I want to be different about Longwood than it currently is?
Well, one thing we're going to start doing next year, hopefully, is more in person national recruiting. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that I can be in person at a lot of these events, whether we go to Chicago or we go to New York or we go to LA, or and be able to meet more people in person
Mm-hmm.
where they are. Because right now our only in person stuff is in the state of Virginia.
Yep.
So, maybe next year I'll be in St. Louis for the weekend, stuff like that. So that's the first thing, is to really continue to expand our networking and recruiting pool.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of our work that we do in the classroom and on stage, there's so many things that we're going to be implementing. And one that I really want to do is a new works program. So, maybe we do a big musical in the spring semester, and in the fall we do a stage reading of something. And I have a lot of contacts, Brie Loudermilk and Kate Kerrigan I've worked with as an
Mm-hmm.
actor, Jeff Thompson and Jordan Mann. I mean, I have a lot of colleagues in the writing world, Lance Horn. So it'd be awesome to get them here and workshop
Mm-hmm.
one of their shows. And I'm also a
Totally.
writer myself, so maybe we can do something like that. And
That's.
then, we're big on guest directors. We have guest directors from time to time. And then we're big on guest artists. I mean, bringing
Mm-hmm.
people to campus from the
Mm-hmm.
professional world. So I just see all of that continuing to grow and flourish, and more amalgamation with our music department, potentially doing some musicals in our larger performance venues on campus. Like we have a
Mm-hmm.
1,000-seat performing arts complex here. So the sky's the limit. But for a lot of that to happen, what we would need is actually more students,
Yep.
not
Yep.
more
Totally makes sense.
resources or faculty or money, but more students to be in those things.
To build it, yeah. Well, and I do think you're finding, the wonderful convenience of online everything, which we all love, is really can increase your reach to people. But making those deep connections, we do still. I mean, it's still the theater world. It's you're going to make that in person. You're really going to seal the deal with a handshake that's really happens in person in a different way
Absolutely.
than
And let me
an
say, our
online experience.
campus is stunningly beautiful, and I've been at a lot of college campuses. So,
Uh-huh.
we show off really well in person.
Mm-hmm.
We have nice facilities. So you kind of have to get the full Longwood experience and to fall in love with it. You do kind of have to come here eventually, but we're
Yep.
we're more than happy to consider people remotely because I know that can also be there's financial barriers involved
Yep.
and stuff like that. But it
Totally.
is a very very nice academic community. Tons of outdoor activities, restaurants, shops. We have Greenfront Furniture, which is like, people come from all over the South to shop. It's like 100,000 feet of high end furniture selling space.
Hmm.
It's like if you're into like interior decorating and stuff, it's like your head's gonna explode. So we
Hmm.
have a lot of cool things. And then Richmond's only an hour and a half. Richmond Airport, you can get to New York City in like under 45 minutes. I've already done it
Mm-hmm.
this semester. Amtrak can get you to DC, can get you to Philly. So we're it might seem like on paper that we're isolated, but we're really not.
Totally. All right. Well, let's transition a little bit into some more biz stuff, some more career stuff. I'd love to kind of hear for most of our listeners to this. These episodes are more the 16, 17-year-olds, though they themselves will quickly enough be the 22-year-olds. But maybe for our alum listeners who listen to the Carrie Butler episode or all the more artisty things, what do you feel like 22-year-olds graduating today? What do you feel like is the big miss? What are they missing out on that you would advise? Hey, you need to be doing more of this especially when it comes with relating with casting directors, relating with managers, etc.
Well, I think that, and some schools do this better than others. You need to be prepping yourself for the types of shows that are popular and being produced often right now.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, that's a piece that a lot of people miss. I mean, there's a reason that, if I'm meeting with a potential client, I want to see their facility on like Disney material or
Mm-hmm.
Mamma Mia or Grease or these shows that are just like constantly coming up because that's what we're submitting our clients on, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what people are booking, and that's how we make our money as representatives of performers. Actor musician stuff is just like always so useful. I
Mm-hmm.
don't play an instrument. That just was something that I never really was able to take to. But for the students that can, it's a huge, huge
Yep.
asset in terms
Yep.
of your career. I would say, and it's tough for me to say because I don't really represent a ton of people that are strong dancers, but there are so many opportunities for people who can make it through a first cut of a dance call, but that
Uh-huh.
also can sing and act.
Uh-huh.
And really, there aren't that many people that can do that. I mean, that can
Mm-hmm.
nail a dance call that's at the level that a dance call in New York City typically is.
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing a lot of casting recently for um, Back to the Future,
Mm-hmm.
and they're so clear in the language in terms of how skilled, how
The
advanced the
dancers. Yeah.
dancing needs to be, even for a lot of the more like character roles. And it says like
Right.
advanced. The breakdowns have been saying like advanced partnering. You
Uh-huh.
know, these are skills that the typical BFA musical theater student is not coming out of school with.
It's advanced partner. Yep.
I
Back to
also
the Future containing two MTCA alumni, including a podcast guest here, JJ Neiman. No big deal, but continue.
All right, yeah. Well, our MTCA people got it. That's
Come
for
on.
sure.
Come on. The advanced partners.
Yeah. Um, I think, and different program heads have different opinions of this. In my opinion, it's important to really be skilled in a couple different styles of theater. Like,
Mm.
I think you should be just as comfortable doing a musical as you are a straight play. I think you
Mm-hmm.
should be just as comfortable doing a Shakespeare or
Mm-hmm.
other classical work, Moliere.
Mm-hmm.
But Shakespeare has just produced so much in this country
Yep.
that I think it's doing a big disservice to musical theater students to not have them doing both plays and
Yep.
musicals.
I often give that as advice to our actors or non-musical theater actors saying, if you don't do musicals, one,
Yeah.
you should be, because you're there's going to be a time in your life you're going to be asked to sing and you're going to wish you could, but if not, you better do Shakespeare, because if you don't do
Yeah.
either, it's like, well, then I guess you're doing TV and film. There just is not that many non-musical, non-classical plays produced for you to really make a
Well,
living.
the TV and film piece is interesting because in some ways it's such a different world, and so few of our undergraduate theater programs have a TV and film component other than, a class maybe.
Hmm.
But if you want to be in that world, it's really important that you know a little bit about it and
Hmm.
how to act on camera. Now, the good thing
Hmm.
is we're doing a lot of that with our self tapes, even if they're for theater projects. But you know, as it almost goes without saying, acting on camera is different than acting on stage. But in some ways, it's not really that different. So it's I'm not saying that somebody can't book a TV show and have
Of
never
course.
been on TV before. I see it every day. But also in New York City, if we're just talking about brass tacks like employment, on camera work, especially episodics, especially network TV shows, are by far the highest paying gig that you
Hmm.
can get.
Hmm.
So if we're just getting down to paying rent in New York City, there's a reason that you know there's a lot of last minute casting for theater projects because people book TV shows,
Yep.
because from a monetary point of view, there's really no comparison. So
Yep.
um, I would
um
encourage people to make themselves as versatile as possible. I guess that's what I'm saying. And also make
yeah.
sure that your book, your repertoire reflects shows that are being done now.
Yep. Well, you mentioned that in some of the things you're looking for, sort of skill set wise, in that interview, if you're meeting with a prospective new client,
Hmm.
and you're saying, okay, I want to see what your Disney stuff is. I want to see what your Grease stuff is. What else are you looking for, just kind of personality wise? I think it's one of the things I felt maybe least prepped for walking into the industry, of going, oh God, what is this experience of interviewing with a potential agent manager? And, sort of how businessy do you want a show am I supposed to be? How much should I be myself as an artist? Like, what are you looking for as you're kind of meeting this potential client and establishing this relationship? What are you looking for in that interview experience?
Well, and every agent or manager is going to give a very different answer for this. My office, we're not super interested in your um, artistic interests or career interests that are outside of the parameters of like what we can submit you for. So a
Hmm.
lot of people come to us and say, "Hey, I have this one woman show, or I wrote a pilot, or I have this idea for, some sort of thing that could turn into the next Fleabag." We're just not the office for that. We don't
Hmm.
really develop talent in that way. We submit actors for theater, film, television, commercials, voiceovers, and print based on the breakdowns for theater, commercials, voiceovers, film, TV, and print that have been
Hmm.
submitted to agents and managers. So we're sort of looking for what can you do for us now and what can we do for you right now. And so then it becomes a big problem when someone comes in that's right out of school, especially, and says, I won't tour, I won't do ships, I won't do
Uh-huh.
non-union, um, I won't go out of town, etc. Because that really limits
Hmm.
um, what we can do together monetarily.
Hmm.
I only get paid if someone books a job. We take 10% of the gross of everything you make on a job that we book you on,
Hmm.
um, which typically means a job that we got you the audition for.
Hmm.
Um, so you kind of have to be really open to taking and or auditioning for a lot of work maybe that you hadn't even previously experienced.
So you want to
Uh,
see an actor who is open to understanding how they're going to pay the bills in this industry. You want them to be able to
exactly.
go, I get it. I'm ready to do cruise ships. I'm ready to do this for a period of time, and then of course they
Exactly.
might say, I want to move on from that. But
Exactly, but at the
early in
beginning
their
of
career
their
that they're.
career, I really can't deal with people that, are really limited in terms of what they will and will not do. Also, I tend to get people much better opportunities if they've done some of those things, like built up their
Hmm.
resume a little bit more,
Hmm.
um, maybe done a non-union tour, done a cruise ship contract, done a theme park, done a children's tour. It just helps you get in the room for other things because now you have like some street credentials. It shows that you've done professional things that were outside of the academic environment. But also,
Hmm.
I will always take someone that's more driven and committed and hardworking and will show up and be prepared over the most talented person in the world. And a lot of that now goes with the self-tape piece of it, because
Uh-huh.
they're so time consuming and there's so much to
Uh-huh.
prepare, and sometimes they're so last minute and you've got to clear your calendar and cancel your dinner date, and you know, maybe you're not even going to be able to fly home for the, you know, your brother's birthday, or, you know, you've got to have a very flexible survival job too sometimes. You know, you'd be surprised, even for things that on paper it would seem like most people would do in a heartbeat, you know, it's sometimes difficult to get them to put the tape together for it.
Totally.
Um,
No, it's one of the big things we talk about with schools, that they're you can train them for the information of the business stuff, but some of these things are like adulting skills
yeah.
that it's really hard at 22 to just figure out how to like organize your life and answer your emails and do some of the things that you need to do if you're going to have a representation. You
And
need
the
to get
other
back to
thing you've
them.
realized, and it's difficult, I'm sure, for a lot of the listeners of this podcast to hear, and I know that you coach people to get into prestigious theater programs, but there is a very, 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 very high amount of people who, within about a couple of years of graduating, no
Of
longer
course.
pursue this
Yep.
because of how difficult it is. And I will say
Yep.
it is really, really hard.
Yep.
That's sort of the bottom line. But the good thing about theater, or being on a movie or being in a TV show, is that it's something you can do at any point in your life. It's
Mm-hmm.
not limited to a certain age. It's really not even limited to a certain location anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you might decide that you want to do something else for a couple years and revisit it at a later date. And I've had many clients that have told me that, and that's cool too. It's your life, but as a manager, it's hard when people kind of waste our time. And as a
Uh-huh.
casting director,
Yep.
and I know a lot of people will listen to this and think, "Oh, I would never do that," and then you'd be surprised how many people
Totally.
actually do. You know,
Yep. Well, no, we talk about a lot. The interest in studying theater and loving to put on plays is not necessarily the same of, do I want this life? Do I want this
right?
very difficult, hard, even when, you know, I often use my wife as an example because she's a very successful actress, but like
Hmm.
it's hard when you're Tony nominated. It's hard
Right.
when you're, no matter what's going on in your life, it is a difficult up and down
Yeah,
that
the
takes
rejection
flexibility.
truly for everyone, and I see it with the people that I represent, is almost daily, I would
Hmm.
say. Can be almost daily, especially if it's a busy
You
audition
hope it's daily.
time.
That means you're getting lots of
It means
opportunities if
you're
you're
getting a
getting
lot of
daily
auditions,
rejection.
but it means you're
Yeah.
not getting, you know, you're also,
Yeah.
in response to that work, a lot of people are saying no. I mean, the
Hmm.
thing that's changed with EcoCast is I now see the audition. So if it was an in-person audition and I
Uh-huh.
represented you, Charlie, I would send you to the audition, you would do it, you would tell me how it went, but I wasn't there, so I don't really know
Right.
how it went. If it's a self-tape, I see it, um, along with casting, seeing it. And so I see how lovely so many people are
Hmm.
at this, and how many nuanced, interesting
Hmm.
tapes they're making that sound beautiful and that are professionally put together. And sometimes you watch it, you're like, boy, who else would be better for, you know, better for this
Uh-huh.
than this person? And that person doesn't even get a call back, you know?
Right.
So um, I I've met so many actors that within a few years, and many that went to top schools, that were just like, no, I can't. This is for the
Totally.
birds, you know. This hustling and this level of poverty. That's the other piece. What
Yep.
you can do a whole podcast series about, is just not sustainable.
Yep. Well, that leads us perfectly. We'll wrap up with just a little advice, maybe for the parents out there. So many of our listeners, of course, are parents. You know, going through that exact thing. You know, maybe some of them go, "I want to support my child, but this is a difficult business." So, what sort of advice would you give to parents? It could be about specific the college process, but also just with their child going into this industry of, you know, how they support their child, but of course also for their long term success, not just in this industry.
I would tell them to seek out a school like Longwood, like some of the other schools that you've had on your podcast, that is really balanced academically, where there's potentially options for double majoring, for minoring, um, to learn other trades and other industries and other academic subjects, um, where they'll be able to get a lot of practical experience, meaning like a lot of stage time,
Hmm.
um, pretty much from day one, because that's really where we see people grow the most, is not only from for their studio work, but from being in shows and playing roles. Um, and that's the biggest thing. If I were to even go back for myself, I would have sought out schools that I would have been able to walk away with a career path with just as much knowledge about as theater.
Mm-hmm.
So, and people, it used to be this weird thing people would say, well, don't get a fallback plan because you'll always fall back on it. Everyone in this business does something
Uh-huh.
else.
Uh-huh.
Everyone. Broadway people, I have had Broadway clients wait tables on Monday nights.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So actually, the people who have skills other than waiting tables tend to really do well because they can do those two things concurrently,
Yep.
particularly if it's something you can do remotely, because that means you can do regional work and keep up with your with whatever that job is, which I was able to do. My work at Baker is remote, so I've been doing it for 10 years while doing, nonsense in Michigan or hair in
Mm-hmm.
Arizona, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Um, so I would recommend that because unfortunately these conservatory degrees are very limiting in terms of they're geared for a career in
Mm-hmm.
singing, dancing, and acting. So it can be difficult once, if and when you decide you want to dabble in something else professionally for a while, to make that transition. And I've seen that a lot, and it's why I've seen a lot of actors go into real estate actually because it doesn't require a degree.
Oh, oh
Um,
yes. Oh, how many, including the one we've had on this podcast.
yeah, and I'm
Um,
not knocking it. That's a super fun
totally.
profession. It's a lot of work, but it's super fun.
Yeah.
And I've known actors to become very successful in it. I've known actors that have gone back and gone to hair school. I've known actors
Mm-hmm.
that have become massage therapists,
Yep.
photographers.
Lawyers, you can get a
Um,
law degree, but yeah.
well, certainly a theater
Yeah.
background is awesome for going to law school. You'd
Yep.
have to go to law school. It's not like you
Yep.
can just take your theater degree and go be a lawyer or go or be a doctor or
I feel like they made a whole television show about that. That's Suits, basically, is what you
yeah.
do. You don't go to the school and just see if you can fake it. You know.
Yeah, I think that's what you have to remember too if you do want to adapt another skill. And you went to like a conservatory, a really stronghold sort of BFA program, you will have to pay more for further education.
Right. Meaning you
Um,
might have to take additional classes to go to get a grad degree.
exactly. You'll have to
Mm-hmm.
probably truly go back to school and almost like do it all over again,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yep.
Um, so I know that's sort of a downer thing, but I just want people to be realistic and not cut themselves off to other career opportunities or educational opportunities. And I'm also just in general a big proponent of um, getting a master's degree at some point, even if it's in theater, because as someone who just got theirs, it does open up a lot of opportunities as well. And it doesn't mean you can't still perform or direct or talent manage or cast.
Yep.
It just means you can do a lot of other things too.
So true. Well, RJ, this was so fun to get to do. We know we can follow you at RJ for the win. Are there other places that we should be checking out Longwood if people wanted more information?
They can add RJ Magee Casting on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook. They can also find Jamie Baker Management on Instagram. We post a lot of our
I love it.
recent client bookings on
I love it.
there. They can also find me on Facebook, RJ Magee, and they can email me at MageeRJ@longwood.edu. They can also find me at rjmageecasting@gmail.com.
Eminently findable, RJ.
Yeah,
Eminently
really.
findable.
Too
Um,
findable sometimes, I
no,
feel like.
it's fantastic. This was such a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yes, yes, yes. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with RJ. Did a long intro, so I'm going to try to be concise in my takeaways here. First off, I just want to talk a little bit about finding the right size of school for you. Obviously, Longwood is not going to be the right school for all of our students, but I do think it's really fascinating in hearing that phrase, the more resources, we have more resources than students to share them with. That was it. This is not a phrase that you're going to hear at some of the more competitive schools we have on the podcast, where it often feels like there are so many students trying to bang down their doors to get in that can be a little overwhelming. And for some students, that kind of competitive fire is exactly what you need to get to the next level. It's what I wanted for sure. Maybe it was the athlete in me, but I really wanted to have a classroom full of students who were all just as intense about the process as me, who were already proven by the very nature of having to get into this competitive program, and who were definitely going to help push me to be better than I could be on my own. I know that's what a lot of our students are looking for, and I think it's a totally great goal if that's you. However, it does need to be said, it's not just a given good that this is the only way to learn or to develop as an artist. Sometimes being a bigger fish in a smaller pond can be exactly right for certain students. Whether that's about timing, some students just aren't ready at 18 for that level of work, or just about who you are as a learner. It really is about what is the right fit for you. And that is true of all kinds of sizes and shapes of programs. And what RJ is describing at Longwood, in a more liberal arts environment with a very choose your own adventure version of how you pursue your BFA, is a very specific kind of pond that might be right for some students. As could other more medium-sized ponds be a better fit for a student who maybe isn't ready for those deep roiling waters of the most competitive ponds. Now I'm just mixing my metaphors. I don't think you can roil in a pond. That's more of an ocean, but you know what I mean. It really is to each their own. And yes, I do think if you end up going to a much smaller pond, like RJ mentioned, you might be a more likely candidate to head an MFA program to get that more intensive training later, or to begin your career with certain resume building activities, like we mentioned, theme parks or cruise ships, etc. That might be a little bit more likely than if you're swimming out of a Michigan or a Carnegie Mellon or, name whatever of those more competitive ponds that you might swim out of. But that might be the exact right path for you. The other thing I wanted to get into was just that comparison of college versus the business, right? I didn't mention the intro, but I meant to, about RJ, being a casting director and how kind of unique that is. We talked about it in the interview a decent amount. I really loved getting some of RJ's brass tacks advice for how do you make money in this industry, sort of talking currentness with the industry, talking about actor musicians, how you fit into a Disney show tomorrow. I really loved his honesty with what his interest was in meeting potential clients, i.e., how could you make money as a manager? How do you make money as a representative? I make 10% of what my artists make. I think this is definitely my experience of many agent managers in terms of what their fiscal relationship is in reality. Of course, each person is different, but I think it is more the rule than the exception in terms of what you should expect from this kind of relationship. Your real estate agent is there to show you houses, and your manager is there to book you work. However, just worth saying for any newer listeners that this is not the approach that we generally recommend from the college process, and it is not how I would be approaching your college auditions. With notable exceptions like RJ and a few others, most college faculty members are not coming from the agent, manager, casting world, and much more from the actor, director, choreographer, artistic side of things. And they are not going to have the kind of direct fiscal relationship with you about being able to book work that an agent manager has. That's not to say that a program head couldn't notice something like, hey, wow, this person is super marketable. But it's just that in general, that wouldn't translate to, and that's going to make me money in the same way. They would be just as interested in, wow, that is an absolutely fascinating artist that I want to get to know better and to develop into I don't know what, in a way that I think very few agents and managers think that way. Again, it's not to say there aren't exceptions on either end, but I would think the percentages are almost the converses of each other. The vast majority of industry reps are looking for the quick fix that immediately makes them money, as opposed to the kind of fascinating artistic puzzle that they don't know what to do with. And the vast majority of colleges are looking for that amazing, messy, depthful artist, as opposed to the slick, pre-branded, plug-and-play product. That was too many P's. Pre-branded plug-and-play product. You got it there. Of course, that's not a hard and fast rule. I think it is complicated by the fact that these things also are not mutually exclusive. You could be a soulful artist with a nimble and trainable vulnerability and very green acting work. And you could also be an incredibly marketable dancer on day one, right? You can be an incredible singer with that marketable voice tomorrow and have, a fascination with writing the next Fleabag that you won't stop talking about, like RJ mentioned. It's not one thing or the other, but I would just say as a rule of thumb, when leading with the college process, lean into your artistry, and when meeting with agents and managers, you might lean into your industry. And I'm just going to end with RJ talking about him getting to see all of the auditions of his clients that weren't getting callbacks and how lovely so much of that work was. I just like hearing this angle on that subject because it's kind of an old subject and it's just about how competitive this process is. There's nothing new there. But I think the reaction to that can often become the jaded reaction of, is anyone even watching? Or, God, it's so hard. I should just give up. All of which, of course, can still happen. You're allowed to have that reaction. But I just like to think that someone is watching and going, I see you and that's beautiful work. No, thank you. Because that really is often the case. Ooh, she is really good. She's talented. I love what she's doing there. Not for us, right? Does that mean that's what's actually happening every time? Of course not. You could imagine that they're snarking or they're snoring through it or they're skipping it. Who knows? Of course that's possible. But I will say I have seen so much of the former. And for those who are about to walk into your audition season right now, it is only going to help us psychologically to focus on that former. So let's do it. Let's imagine with every rejection, the professor said, "Ooh, I loved them. I wish I had a spot for them." Because I have heard countless teachers say exactly that. They'll bring up a student and they go, "Oh, she was so good. I wish I'd been able to say yes to her." So let's just imagine that's what's always happening and put that positive and productive energy into the world. And with that, another episode of Mapping the College Audition in the books, produced by Meghan Cordier and Kelly Prendergast. Check us out on Instagram at Mapping the College Audition, on TikTok at MT College Auditions. You'll see silly videos from MTCA and me, a lot of fun. Leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, of course. And don't forget about our junior workshop tonight. If you're listening live, if it's like 8:01 p.m., just turn off the podcast, click on our website, and join our junior workshop. All that information is available at mtca.com. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, may you all be advanced partners, something I work on in therapy each week. We'll talk to you soon.